Professor Ian Plimer, great to see you, Ian. Always welcome here on Outsiders. I want to ask you first about The Voice. You spend a lot of time in outback Australia, where mining, exploratory mining areas. You know the outback incredibly well. You always predicted that this Voice thing would never pass muster. What's your reaction to the result?
Well, it was very interesting to see Queensland, Northern Territory, South Australia and Western Australia, where there was a significant outback Aboriginal population, and all those states and territories were above 60%. So it's telling us something very fundamental, that we have a huge divide in this country, and it's between very, very wealthy people living in inner city areas and those who are actually creating the new wealth, such as those in rural Australia. And for the mining and exploration industry, if treaties go ahead, then you might as well say goodbye to mining in Australia. The Woodside example is probably the best one of the lot.
And Ian, I mean, just thinking about those results, you know, you do see where The Voice was really successful. It was in those sort of seats that are predominated by people who are involved with corporate Australia, not the mining and productive industries, but maybe some of the less productive sort of parts of the economy. What do you make of the fact that we were just discussing how in the Republic referendum and in this referendum, those same seats all kind of went the same way, and that it's almost a geographic and class thing versus almost whatever else the policy is that's being put up? Very much so. And people living in those teal seats and some of the other inner city seats, they might go on a wine tasting trip to Mudgee. And I think they're going outback. Look, I can tell you that on a quiet day you can hear the surf in Mudgee. You know, I mean, that's how close to the coast are. These people have never been in the bush. They would not know how to change a tyre. They wouldn't know how to fix a problem. I've seen them in the outback. They get to the end of a sealed road and there's a dirt road there and they're all debating it. Oh, should we?
The electric vehicle won't go down.
And then they turn around and go back. I mean, it's just amazing.
Ian,
just want to have no idea.
Just want to go back to you mentioned Woodside. Now, tell us about that specifically. Rita and James and I have a thing called Instant Karma, and we played the Woodside episode last week from Instant Karma because the board of Woodside came out heavily for the yes, but then what happened?
Well, I think it was a window for the average punter saying, wait a minute, this is the way it's going to go. And this is going to stop development. Now, Woodside was right over the horizon, out to sea. And there was trawling done to find one person who might have some sort of objection to this. And people saw, well, what a farce this is. Now, the Woodside board, like many other boards, were very, very woke. And I think shareholders, quite rightfully, should be asking serious questions, firstly about any monies donated, and secondly, why the board got involved in politics and took these sort of decisions.
But what then happened to Woodside? That's what I'm saying. What happened to them?
Well, with Woodside, they have to go back to the drawing board.
Because?
Because of one person who was sued on by the Environmental Defenders Office, which taxpayers pay for, to fight the federal government. So you had one government organisation fighting another, taxpayers paying for both, to stop a seismic survey.
And it was on Indigenous grounds or on Aboriginal reasons?
It was way out to sea.
Yes, but that was the argument, wasn't it?
Well, the argument is fallacious, of course. Now, you can put wind turbines out to sea and do similar sort of seismic surveys. That's OK. But if you're looking for fossil fuels, which not only fuel up your car, but they make medicines, they're used to make plastics, they're used to make fertilisers. If we don't have that, we don't eat. Apparently that's bad. So you've got this tortured logic by people who are really quite evil because they want to destroy jobs in Australia.
Rita? Sorry.
Well, and this is happening without a voice in the Constitution.
Of course.
So how do we actually remedy that? We've stopped The Voice, thank God, but how do we fix a problem that's already evident? Because this Woodside decision isn't in isolation. There's quite a few others where you can say these aren't logical decisions, where we had a project that was stopped because it might disrupt a serpent, a real serpent, a mythical one, yes, a mythical serpent.
Yes. Yeah, well, that's quite common. I know one project where there's two exploration areas that are being amalgamated into one, and they have to go back and do all the land surveys again. And all that means is paying someone $800 a day stagger around and look for a little chip here and a little chip there. This is just a financial rort, and the activists who had everything financially to gain from this really have to be pushed aside and to put in the new great Aboriginal generation of people like Jacinta Price and Warren Mundine. We cannot have those failed activists continuing on the same path, and this is the danger with The Voice now.
Now tell us about those outback communities, because Warren and Jacinta have both, talked about them and spent time out there. You've spent time out there. Isn't the problem that they're living in these kind of communist fiefdoms, which individuals don't have property rights? You have the big man who runs the show and gets the money and spreads it. All that has to change, hasn't it?
Yes, it does. And no wonder the ACT vote went as it was, because these are the people who are running the show, who've got the most to benefit, who will expand their government departments with your money to continue what is a disaster. Now, these outback areas, these kids don't get schooling. They can't get schooling. They quite often can't go home. Drugs and alcohol are rife. Sexual destruction of young children is happening for kids from 8 years old, even younger. So there has to be a fundamental change. This cannot be driven by Canberra, unless, of course, you shift the Department of Aboriginal Affairs and put them, say, in Halls Creek or in Tennant Creek.
I think that's a great idea.
And then they'll be at the coalface.
Fantastic. And let's get Prime Minister Jacinta Price to start running some things in the future.
Well,
I think we would see
more.
a big difference there. Professor Ian Plimer, thanks so much for coming here on Outsiders, talking to us about The Voice.